When a quiet mountain guide rescues a stranger during a storm, he has no idea she's the CEO of a global tech empire. What begins as survival unfolds into healing and unexpected love. A story of second chances, found family, and the quiet power of kindness. If you believe in stories that warm the soul, subscribe and stay. More heartfelt journeys like this are just beginning. The wind whispered first, a hush that threaded between the pine needles, like an old song, low and mournful. Jack Crawford paused on a ridge, squinting toward the horizon where clouds were pulling themselves together in bruised blue layers. Behind him, 9-year-old Liliana was hopping across flat rocks, her boots skimming with practiced ease. It was their ritual. Twice a week, no matter the season, unless the sky spat lightning or the forest grown with ice, they hiked the hillside just before supper. No phones, no plans, just the woods, his daughter's hand in his, and the path worn not by feet, but memory. Jack didn't speak much on these hikes. He didn't need to. Liliana did most of the talking, about stars, foxes, her mother, and sometimes nothing at all. Just being here with him was enough. But tonight, the wind had teeth. "Looks like the sky is brewing something," he said quietly, glancing back. Liliana looked up, narrowed her eyes the same way her mother used to when reading a storm. "We should head back," she said, voice light but certain. Jack nodded. She didn't spook easy. They turned, boots crunching over thawing frost and early spring leaves. The slope was slick in parts. Shadows were growing long, tree trunks stretching like silent sentinels. And then faint, a cry, thin and sharp as glass against stone. Jack stopped. Liliana's hand gripped his sleeve. "Did you hear that?" He listened. Nothing. Just the wind playing tricks again. "Daddy," there was again. Distant. Fragile. A sound that didn't belong to the wind. Jack crouched, eye level with her. "Go home. Stray home. Call Gabe at the station. Tell him I heard someone calling from Ridge. Use the radio. You remember how." Liliana's lip trembled, just slightly, but she nodded. "You'll be careful?" "Always." He brushed a leaf from her braid and kissed her forehead. "I'll meet you at the cabin." Then he turned and climbed. The forest changed the moment he was alone. He moved like a man who knew these woods better than his own breath. But the trees were slick with cold, and snow had begun to fall, not soft and gentle, but sharp, sideways, like it was angry. The wind howled now. No more whispering. The voice cried again, closer this time, and weaker. "Hey!" Jack shouted into the white. Nothing. Again he called. A pause. Then, "Here, please, help." His legs ached, breath short. He rounded a bend and nearly stumbled over her. She was half buried under a fallen pine limb, hair tangled with pine needles, jacket ripped at the sleeve, face blotched with cold. Her lips were blue, her eyes dazed, one ankle twisted wrong. Jack fell to his knees beside her, lifting the branch, checking her pulse, whispering calm. "Name?" he asked, pressing a blanket from his pack around her. She blinked. "Claire." "That's good. Stay with me, Claire. You're going to be all right." He moved fast, built a windbreak from fir branches, started a fire in a dry patch beneath an outcrop. His hands were red, fingers stiff, but they moved with practiced purpose. He wrapped her in his coat. His only thought, keep her warm, keep her awake. Claire's words slurred. Fever was setting in. She muttered something about a brother, a betrayal, a river. Jack didn't ask. Night fell like a drop curtain. The snow thickened. When the wind quieted for an hour near dawn, Jack hoisted her onto his back. Each step down the mountain was a vow. He didn't feel the weight, not really. She was barely conscious, her head resting against his shoulder like something too exhausted to dream. Her breath was warm against his neck. The trail back to his cabin was half lost under drifts, but he didn't need it. His feet remembered. At the cabin. Liliana waited with the porch light on and warm towels by the stove. Jack laid the woman gently on the couch. Liliana watched with wide eyes. Will she be okay? I think so, Jack said, though he wasn't sure. They changed her into dry clothes, wrapped her in quilts. Jack lit a fire that snapped and sparked like it had been waiting to speak. He stirred soup. Liliana sat near the woman and held her hand, the way her mother once held hers after nightmares. The snow kept falling. The world was quiet. Claire slept for almost a full day. When she finally stirred, it was dark again. The fire burned low. Jack was fixing the stove in the corner, Liliana humming softly as she read from a picture book. Claire sat up fast, disoriented. Where? Jack turned. It's okay. You're safe. Her eyes darted around. Who are you? Jack Crawford. This is my daughter, Liliana. You were stuck in the woods. We found you. She tried to stand, winced. My ankle sprained. Maybe worse. You need rest. The storm cut off the roads. Rescue's on the way, but might take a day or two. Claire studied him, breath still shallow. No signal? She asked. Jack shook his head. Out here, storms kill towers faster than trees. She nodded, slow. Thank you for saving me. Jack shrugged like it was nothing. You do the same. She didn't answer. Later, over soup, Claire said little. She pushed peas to the side of the bowl like a child. Liliana offered her a spoonful of honey. It's good for you. Claire smiled, soft and sad. Thank you, little bear. That night, Jack laid an extra blanket on her cot and pulled the curtain that divided the room. Liliana was already asleep, curled like a kitten. Claire lay awake, staring at the cabin ceiling. With beams dark with years, a dried flower wreath hung just above. She touched the edge of the quilt. It smelled like cedar and old memories. In the middle of the night, she whispered, Elliot, I'm sorry. Jack heard, but he didn't speak. The next day, Claire limped slowly to the window and stood there a long time. Jack handed her tea. You're quiet. I needed quiet, she said. Didn't know how much. Snow was beginning to melt. A single drip from the eaves tapped a rhythm against the porch railing. Jack noticed the way she scanned the treetops, as if listening for something she couldn't name. You from around here? No, she said. Just passing through. A beat. Then, trying to remember who I was before everything. Jack didn't ask what everything meant. He just nodded. Outside, the forest exhaled slowly, its breath rising in soft clouds. Claire's fingers trembled as she held the mug. Not from cold, from something else. Jack looked at her then, not as a stranger, but someone carrying something heavy, something breakable. He knew the shape of that silence. He wore it too. Later that evening, she helped Liliana fix a puzzle of mountain birds. Claire traced the pieces like they were pages of a forgotten book. I used to hike with my brother, she said softly, mostly to herself. Liliana didn't ask where he was. Claire didn't say. That night, as the fire snapped low and sleep fell like a blanket, Claire sat in the doorway and looked up at the stars. Jack brought her an old quilt, her second, and draped it over her shoulders. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded and turned back inside. She sat a while longer, watching her breath rise in the moonlight. She didn't know why her heart felt like it had finally stopped screaming. The fire was never allowed to die. Each time it faltered, Jack was there, quiet as the snow outside, feeding it with pine kindling and cedar shavings, as if warmth itself were a promise he refused to break. Claire had been in the cabin for 3 days. Time folded differently in the mountains. Hours moved like honey. Daylight came and went in slow sweeps of soft gray, and night fell not with urgency, but grace. The storm outside had not relented. It wrapped the cabin in white silence, like the world had gone to sleep and left only them behind. Claire sat most days near the window, wrapped in Liliana's extra quilt. She didn't speak much. She watched the snowfall with the stillness of someone watching their old life drift away. Jack gave her space. He moved around the cabin with quiet efficiency, splitting wood, stirring stew, brushing snow from the solar panel with an old broom. He spoke when needed, but never too much. Words, like firewood, were not to be wasted. 𝐿𝐿iana was the one who filled the silences. She read aloud from her favorite book about a bear who found a baby bird and decided to raise it like its own. She offered Claire little trinkets, an acorn cap, a smooth rock shaped like a heart, a pencil drawing of a tree. Claire accepted each one with a hesitant smile, as if she wasn't sure what to do with kindness anymore. Once, 𝐿𝐿iana held up a music box. It had belonged to her mother. When the lid opened, a cracked melody played, slow, waltzing, full of memory. Claire blinked fast and turned away before the song finished. She was still hiding, not from the snow, but from herself. Jack noticed the way she traced the rim of her mug with her finger, like she was thinking through every memory that had led her here. He noticed how her hands trembled when she was tired and how, sometimes, she stared into the fire with such intensity, it looked like she wanted to burn the past down. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. One morning, while the storm roared loud outside, Claire limped to the kitchen counter and surprised him. "Can I help?" she asked, motioning toward the bread dough he was kneading. Jack glanced up. "You cook?" "I've seen it done," she said dryly. He chuckled, the first time he'd laughed in days. She slid beside him, and they worked side by side in silence. Her movements were careful, more out of unfamiliarity than pain. She tried to fold the dough like he did, but it stuck to her fingers. Too much flour? "Not enough," Jack said. He reached over and gently showed her the right pressure. Her hands were cold. His were warm. For a second, neither moved. Then she smiled barely. "I built something once. A company." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Yeah. My brother and I. We started it in our garage. Everyone thought we were crazy." "Were you?" "A little." He didn't push further. Just handed her a towel to clean her hands. That night, the generator coughed once, then went dark. The cabin dimmed, lit only by the fire, and a lantern hung above the table. 𝐿𝐿iana had fallen asleep with her head on Claire's lap. Her dark curls curled into Claire's sweater like ivy. Jack watched from across the room. Claire stroked 𝐿𝐿iana's hair absent-mindedly, eyes distant. "I used to dream about this," she said. "Not the snow, the quiet." He nodded. "I didn't think I'd miss it, the stillness." "Most people don't miss it until it's gone," Jack said. Claire didn't answer, but her fingers didn't stop moving through 𝐿𝐿iana's hair. The next day, the storm paused just for a while. A pale light broke through the clouds, casting long fingers across the snow. Jack took the moment to check the signal from the rescue beacon he'd placed outside. Claire watched from the porch. Her ankle was healing, though still stiff. She used one of Jack's old hiking poles like a cane. Behind her, 𝐿𝐿iana drew pictures on the fogged-up windows, hearts, stars, and what looked like 3 stick figures holding hands. Claire smiled when she saw it. "I think she's drawing us." "She does that," Jack said. "She drew the UPS guy as a unicorn once." Claire laughed softly. It was a kind of laugh that sounded new, like a door opening that hadn't been touched in years. Back inside, Jack handed her a tin box. "What's this?" "Something of hers," he said, nodding toward 𝐿𝐿iana. "But I think she wants you to read it." Claire opened the lid. Inside were letters, dozens of them, folded pages with messy handwriting, some in crayon, notes to her mom, some unfinished, some never sent. Claire read one aloud. "Dear Mommy, we made soup again today. Daddy said I can be the taste tester. I think I'll make you a cup when I see you again. Love, 𝐿𝐿iana." Claire closed her eyes. Jack stood near the fire, arms crossed. She writes them when it's quiet. Says her mom can still hear if the words are true enough. Claire placed the letter back, gently. "That's beautiful." "Yeah," Jack said. "She is." That night, Claire's laptop blinked to life for a few seconds. Just enough juice from the solar to power it briefly. A notification pinged. Missed calls. Hundreds of them. Emails. News alerts. The screen flashed her face. 𝐭𝐨𝐬𝐲𝐸, CEO missing. Concerns mount AS days pass. She closed the lid quickly. Jack saw, but didn't connect the dots. Not yet. Later, by the fire, they sat close, not touching, just near enough to feel each other's warmth. Claire stared into the flames. I wasn't always like this, she whispered. I used to be softer. Jack didn't look at her. We all were. They sat there, firelight flickering across tired eyes and half-healed hearts. You think it's too late? She asked. Jack shook his head. Not if you're asking. She smiled. This time, full and unguarded. In the dark, a knock sounded. Not loud, but real. A voice called from outside. Search and rescue. Claire froze. Jack stood slowly, opened the door. A man in bright orange stepped inside. Radio crackling. Snow melting on his boots. We found the beacon. Took a while. Storm was hell. You all right? Jack nodded. Yeah, we're okay. Claire's hands tightened around her cup. The next morning, the chopper came. Liliana cried when Claire hugged her goodbye. Jack didn't cry, but he didn't meet her eyes, either. Claire lingered on the porch. I lied, she said finally. I didn't just get lost. I ran. Jack said nothing. Claire looked at him, tears pooling. Thank you for letting me hide. He nodded, slow. Take care, Claire. And just like that, she was gone. Snow blew in soft circles where her boots had been. Jack closed the door. The fire, still burning, cast its light across the empty quilt. The cabin felt emptier than it should have. It wasn't her things. She brought almost nothing, and she'd taken even less when she left. It was the absence of presence that echoed. The chair near the fire was vacant, the air no longer warmed by the rhythm of her breath. The blanket folded neatly, her teacup washed and shelved. No trace. And yet everything had changed. Liliana asked about her every day. Do you think she made it back okay? Jack would nod. Yeah, she's strong. But he didn't say her name. Not anymore. It was easy that way. The first week, letters came, scrawled in crayon and watercolor, sealed with stickers. Liliana folded them carefully, addressed them to Claire, somewhere in the city, and placed them in the tin box by the window. We'll send them when the road's clear, she said. Jack never moved the box. He couldn't. Not yet. Far away, in a place where glass walls stretched toward the sky and the world moved in meetings and headlines. Claire stood at a podium. She wore gray, not because it was the color of grief or power, but because it matched the storm inside her. A sea of cameras clicked. Flashes. Reporters. Stockholders. Everyone asking who she'd become after disappearing. Everyone needing her to return to a world she no longer recognized. Claire's assistant leaned in, whispering. The scripts in the teleprompter. Boards expecting a statement. She nodded, then ignored it. She looked out into the crowd. Hundreds of expectant eyes. And she told them the truth, that she'd gone walking and never meant to be found. That grief had undone her, not her company. That the silence of the mountain had been the first thing to make sense in a long, long time. She didn't name Jack or Liliana, but they were in every word. I won't be returned to the role of CEO, she said finally. I think someone else belongs here now. A quiet ripple moved through the room. Her COO stood in the wings, stunned. Claire turned, stepping away from the podium like she was finally stepping out of shadow. In the cabin, the fire still burned. Jack never let it die, but it didn't give him comfort like it used to, not since he'd seen her on the screen. He hadn't meant to. Liliana had found an old news clip when the internet finally came back. It was her, Claire Windsor, standing on that stage, the woman he'd nursed through fever, whose hair he'd tucked behind her ear in sleep, the woman who never told him. The betrayal wasn't sharp. It was quiet, like cold water soaking through wool. A slow, seeping ache. He didn't tell Liliana. He just pulled back. A little more each day. Claire noticed. Her city apartment had windows too large and too many mirrors. Everything echoed. She missed the hush of snow, the pop of pine in a wood stove. She missed the smell of old leather and engine oil. She missed being unknown. She missed Lily. And Jack. She tried to write back, but each letter sounded false. Too careful, too curated. So she didn't send any. Not yet. Instead, she walked. She wandered bookstores, stood in used record shops, and once, at a farmer's market, she saw a girl laughing over wild honey and nearly broke into tears. One night, in the quiet, she opened her laptop, not to check email, but to delete it. All of it. The inbox, the missed meetings, the threads of urgency. She erased them like footprints in the snow, not out of anger, but reverence. It had been her world once. It didn't need to be forever. Weeks passed. Then one morning, Jack found a letter, not in the tin, but slipped under the cabin door. It wasn't from the city. It was from a nearby ranger outpost, stamped and sealed. Jack, I never meant to lie. I meant to breathe. I didn't know how to say I'd built something big and still felt small inside it. You gave me silence, and that saved me. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I was afraid I'd become someone I couldn't explain. You and Lily, you made the world soft again. I needed that more than I knew. I'm not asking for anything. Just don't let the fire go out. Claire. Jack folded the letter. Sat for a long time in the still of morning. He didn't cry, but something settled in his chest like snow on a branch. Quiet and inevitable. Liliana came into the room, rubbing her eyes. She saw the letter in his hand. Was it from her? He nodded. What did she say? She said she's sorry. Liliana thought about that, then said, I'm not mad. I just miss her. Jack reached for the tin box. Opened it. Let's send these, he said. Claire didn't answer for weeks. But when she did, she wrote to Lily first. Inside the envelope, a pressed pine needle, a tiny bracelet made from leather cord, and a note in careful handwriting. Dear Lily, I wear the heart-shaped rock on my desk. It reminds me of our tea times and the bear book. I miss you, too. Tell your dad I said thank you for everything. Love, Claire. It wasn't much, but it opened something. That winter, Jack started walking trails again. He added new signs, cleaned old paths. Locals stopped by more. A few tourists, too. They asked about guided hikes, weekend retreats. He hadn't planned for it, but the thought didn't feel foreign. He pulled an old notebook from a drawer and started sketching something. A map, a list of cabins, a schedule. Nature and quiet, time and space, not a business, a healing. Then spring came, not loud, just earlier sunrises and melting snow. One afternoon, Jack stood outside, stacking firewood when he saw her, walking the trail, alone, a backpack slung over her shoulder, hair loose, face softer. She smiled before she said anything. He didn't speak. She came closer. Liliana burst in the cabin, arms flying wide. Claire caught her mid-step. They stayed like that for a long time. Jack watched them, then slowly walked over. Claire looked up. I came to stay, if that's okay. Jack didn't nod or smile. He just placed a hand over hers. Warm, steady. We kept the fire going. The trail looked different now. Same turns, same trees, same rise and fall through the hills, but different because she was walking it again. This time, not to get lost, but to come home. Claire's boots left careful prints in the soft earth. Spring had softened the path. Patches of thawing snow still clung to shaded spots, but the earth beneath felt alive again. She paused where the ridge overlooked the valley. The wind stirred the hem of her coat. A crow called somewhere behind her. She closed her eyes, took one long breath. then kept walking. Downhill the cabin waited. Smoke curled from the chimney, slow and sure, like breath from a sleeping animal. She saw Jack before he saw her. On the porch, elbows on knees, watching the treetops. Liliana was nowhere in sight, maybe drawing, maybe sleeping, maybe waiting by the window with her nose pressed to the glass. Claire stepped out into the clearing, and Jack looked up. His face didn't change. Not at first. But his eyes, those quietly kind, deeply tired eyes, softened, as if they'd been bracing for a storm that never came. She dropped her pack near the step. "I said I'd come back," she whispered. Jack stood. He walked the 2 steps toward her and stopped. She didn't move. He reached out, not for her hand, but to touch the hem of her coat. A silent question. Her answer was breathless. "I'm here." Liliana barreled out the front door like spring itself, arms flung wide. Claire bent to catch her, tears she didn't expect blooming instantly. "Did you bring the bear book?" Liliana asked into her shoulder. Claire laughed. "I never let it go." That night, they ate by the fire. Something simple. Beans, cornbread, the last jar of plum jam. Jack brewed tea in the dented kettle. Claire remembered. The cabin hadn't changed. Still full of old woods and hand-mended things. But the air had shifted. She wasn't a guest anymore. She was something else. After Liliana went to sleep, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm, the bracelet Claire gave her on her wrist, Claire and Jack sat in silence. The fire cracked softly. "I thought you'd stay gone," he said. Claire stared into the flames. "I almost did." She held something in her lap, a folded paper. Not her company resignation, not a speech, a drawing, Liliana's, of 3 stick figures, holding hand beside a cabin with smoke curling above it. One figure had glasses, one had curls, one had tall boots and wild hair. Claire handed it to him. "She sent this to me 2 weeks ago." Jack turned it slowly in his hands. "I read it," Claire said, voice shaking a little. "I sat there in that glass apartment, holding this, and I realized I didn't want a corner office." She paused. "I wanted this." Jack didn't speak for a long time. Then, quiet as snow, he said, "I'm scared." She looked up. "Of what?" He met her eyes. "That this is just a break for you. A pause. That you'll outgrow us." Claire reached over, took his hand in both of hers. "I don't want to pause," she said. "I want roots." The next morning, she helped him clear the trail. Together, they walked the curb behind the cabin, where branches had fallen and snow still lingered in the shadows. Claire tied her hair back with a strip of leather. Jack smiled to himself. "You really are staying." She didn't answer, but she kept clearing. Later that month, they registered the retreat idea with the local ranger's office. Nothing big, just guided hikes. Quiet rest. Claire didn't put her name on the paperwork, but Jack knew she paid the web developer, donated the first solar panels, found the perfect kettle for every cabin. They built slowly, 1 step, 1 cabin, 1 trail at a time. Word spread. A journalist came once, just a woman with a notepad and tired eyes. She didn't recognize Claire, just saw her stirring soup over the fire, humming something soft. When she finally asked, Claire only said, "I used to be someone else, but I like who I am here." The article called the retreat a sanctuary for soul. Claire clipped it and left it in Jack's workshop. He never said anything, but he tacked it to the wall above his workbench. A year passed like breath. Not fast, but full. The retreat thrived. Jack taught nature classes. Claire offered quiet tech mindfulness sessions. Just a single tablet and headphones in a room full of pine scent and birdsong. Liliana made name tags for every guest. She started calling Claire her bonus mom. No one corrected her. The media found out eventually. Photos leaked. Tech titan turned mountain mystic. Claire Windsor's off-grid empire. They didn't care. Jack told her once by the river, "You don't have to hide who you were." Claire touched his cheek. I'm not hiding. I'm healing. They kissed for the first time under that same tree where she'd fallen long ago. Full circle. Full heart. Winter came back. Storms too, but they weren't afraid anymore. One morning, thunder rolled low over the ridge. Liliana tugged on her boots. Storm's coming. Jack nodded. Claire zipped her coat. Let's go hiking. They stepped into the cold, boots crunching in rhythm. Liliana ran ahead, laughing. Claire and Jack walked behind her, shoulders brushing, silence easy. Snow began to fall, soft and slow. The wind rose, but no one turned back. They walked forward, together. If this heartfelt tale touched your heart, please like and subscribe. There are more like these to follow.